Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
David Cameron's cabinet used to be criticised for being packed with old Etonians. The new Prime Minister, by contrast, is a grammar school girl, and her cabinet is 70% state educated. Theresa May and her Education Secretary haven't ruled out the creation of new state grammar schools. Here's what she said on the subject in her interview on The Marr Show at the weekend.
Well, Justine Greening was on your programme and said she'll be looking at these issues, which she is doing, so we will look at the work that Justine is doing. But the abiding theme that I want to ensure is there is that of giving opportunity to young people, of ensuring that whatever school anybody is going to, wherever they are in whatever part of the country, they're actually able to we're able to ensure they get that good quality of education that gives them the opportunities to get on in life.
Well, Theresa May's stance has given hope to those like Don Porter, the founder of Conservative Voice, who have long supported new grammar schools. Here's his soapbox.
1970s Britain, the age of the comprehensive, brought to life on television in Grange Hill. During this time, there was a push to move away from selective education, which saw many grammar schools closed or converted into comprehensives. But the 163 grammar schools that still exist in England regularly top league tables. This school has actually been allowed to expand to a new campus some 7 miles away. And I think that's a great thing. We need to build upon the success of grammar schools and create a system that both develops and promotes young people. That also means a higher standard of technical education for those students who do not wish to pursue an academic path. But it doesn't mean that everything about the previous system of grammar schools was desirable. Let me give you an example. I strongly believe that the 11 plus as a one-off test should change. The testing of a child only at the age of 11 was far too restrictive and should now be replaced by multiple opportunities to enter a grammar school. And another important point. The first wave of new grammar schools should be placed in areas of the country facing social deprivation to show their power as an engine of social mobility. This isn't about trying to return to a bygone golden age of education. It is about trying to create and build great schools for the future. Conservative Voice wants to create a grammar school system fit for the 21st century and that gives a boost to choice, opportunity for all, and aspiration.
And Don Porter of Conservative Voice joins us here in the studio now. Apart from anecdotally, what actual evidence is there that grammar schools are these great engines of social mobility?
I think if one looks back to the 1960s, when the grammar schools were putting far more people into universities, 25% of those people going to university were from working class backgrounds.
But that's the 1960s.
1960s.
What about the ones that remain today? I mean, they don't send vast numbers of children from poor backgrounds. I mean, the evidence is clearly there. They are stuffed full of middle-class children who could pay privately or...
Well, of course, Joe, if you ban something that the Labour government did in 1998, we go down from 1,300 grammar schools to 164. And even Tony Blair, in his autobiography, described that process of banning grammar schools as academic vandalism. And there's a strong feeling that even he regretted the way in which that was done. They were abandoned. So we're only looking at now 164 grammar schools.
Right, so you're saying if there were more of them, then, well, clearly more children from poorer backgrounds. But even as a proportion of the ones that exist, it's a very small proportion. I mean, Teresa Villiers, would you like to see more grammar schools?
Well, I'm happy with the rules as they stand at present,
Right.
which enables...
So you don't think you should go back over Conservative policy? I mean, the party spent a long time arguing about this, and David Cameron made a decision.
Yeah, and, you know, I'm open to future ideas on this, but, I mean, I think what is the really crucial thing is nothing must divert us from trying to make sure every single child has access to a good school place.
Well, sure.
Whatever sort of school they're in, I think it would be a backward step if we went back to some kind of binary divide, age 11, where you separate the sheep from the goats. I think one of the concerns about the previous system was the focus on academic excellence in grammar schools wasn't replicated in the quality of the education that people who didn't get into grammar schools were offered, and that's why we have the position we have at the moment.
So it's a distraction from actually creating better state comprehensive schools if you have, and even you admitted it in your film, this completely divisive line that's taken at 11 that can ruin kids' chances.
That is precisely why we want to change that system. And it is restrictive if a child only has the opportunity at 11 to get to a grammar school. I failed my 11 plus, went to a secondary modern school, and then went to a grammar school after O-levels. For me, going to a grammar school was transformational. You might say, Joe, that was anecdotal. But, you know, what is also interesting, and Teresa, I know, has grammar schools in her own constituency.
Yes, but she's also said she thinks it would be a backward step.
But you know, the point that Tony Blair also makes, which I think is fascinating, is that it is people who are in privileged positions who can send their children to private schools, who actually then don't wish to give the same opportunity of aspiration to people who can't afford private school.
Well, and that's true, isn't it, Chukramuna? I mean, you know, this is about giving children from poor backgrounds the opportunity to go to schools that only middle-class families can normally afford. So it's progressive.
What about the 9 out of 10 that don't get to go to the grammar schools? I'm with Teresa.
But if there are more of them, then more will go.
Let me finish what I was going to say. I think Teresa's right. This would be a backward step, and this idea that grammar schools are this great engine for social mobility is utter garbage. Most of the pupils who go there are from relatively wealthy middle-class families anyway. Only 3% on average of grammar school children are on free school meals, which compares to a national average of 18%. And I know from my time as a school governor at a school in my own constituency in Streatham that the key thing that determines how well the school performs is excellent leadership and good quality teaching.
But they're good schools, aren't they? Grammar schools, they're good schools. They tend to do extremely well, and their pupils go on to either extremely good training or university.
But again, there's all the research shows that if you look at the top streams or sets in comprehensives, that actually the higher performing pupils actually do better there than they do in grammars. And the problem with this is just so retro. I mean, come on, can we not
All right,
come
so you're
up
not
with
into
some
retro.
new ideas?
You're not into retro, but anyway.
There's nothing retro, Chuck, about... I know that both of you have the privilege of a private education. Yes. And you know, what is always interesting about those people who've had a private education, that they sort of push back when people aspire. Aspiration.
Don't you dare
Aspiration.
No, that is absolutely outrageous. That somehow,
well, hang on,
because I went to an independent school, I don't want my young constituents to do well.
Aspiration is not the only sole preserve of those who go to private schools.
No one is arguing
It is also...
that. No, this is straw man nonsense.
It is also about those people who can't afford to go to private schools. And you know, the point you're making, Joe, I really strongly believe that we need to change next time, and hence we're making the point that the next or first wave of new grammar schools should go into areas of severe deprivation.
But what's to stop middle-class families moving straight into those areas? Because now we know that even top state schools, not grammar schools, but top state comprehensive schools, that is what's happening. Those who can afford it move very close by, up go the house prices, and immediately your area of social deprivation has changed.
I totally agree with that point. Excellent question. It can be decided by controlling the catchment areas of those new 20 grammar schools. We say 20, but that's the sort of number we believe would make a difference and start to demonstrate the point about social mobility.
Do you think it would actually be popular? I mean, do you think people really want it in any large numbers?
The last YouGov survey that was carried out was the early part of last year. 1,600 and odd people throughout the country participated in that research, and 53% of people who were interviewed actually looked forward to the return of grammar schools.
Well, let's see.
And even with Labour voters, there were a majority of people who actually wanted the return of grammar
Amongst
schools.
Labour voters?
40%
Does that surprise
of Labour
you?
voters.
Does that
No,
surprise-
well, I think if you look at the polls, there is more support for grammar
Amongst
schools than you would think.
amongst Labour voters,
But in the
though.
end, I mean, you know, you keep talking about social mobility, and not once during this exchange have you been able to produce any evidence to show that the current system, you mentioned the 1960 system, promotes social mobility. The 1960s one didn't, and the current one doesn't either.
We're going to have to end it there, but thank you for coming in.
I've been